Hey everyone, I'm Emma McLaughlin. I'm a naturopath, herbalist and nutritionist at Kingscliff Clinical Naturopathy, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about gut health and why it is so important. So we're going to call this tummy time. On my Facebook page yesterday, Kingscliff Clinical Naturopathy, I popped up a post which is a little video about your microbiota and why it's so important to nourish this. And I'm going to run a few little educational videos so that we get a bit of information about what makes up a healthy gut and how we have to nourish this, why it's important, the foods we can use to help aid in digestion and absorbing nutrients, the foods that we can include that contain natural probiotics and prebiotics, and what this means to health. Wait until that truck goes past. Okay, so basically, if we're talking about digestion and the gastrointestinal tract, it starts right up here from our mouths. And this is important because digestion starts from when we actually smell food and we get messages that go to the brain and tell enzymes to start increasing in our mouths and then in our stomachs. We taste food and this enzyme action starts to break down food as we're chewing, but also sends more signals further down the gastrointestinal tract to release more enzymes to break down food, but also to get this sort of peristaltic action going so our tummies actually start moving and start getting ready to break things down. We get bile release from our gallbladders, as also directed by our livers, and it's really important, therefore, when we talk about mindful eating, to actually focus on the smell of food, the look of food, the taste of food, because this is all sending messages back into our brain that's going to help regulate this. So for those of us, and I am myself guilty of this at times, who are busy and we sit at our computers and we get something in, or we're on the move and we get something in while we're walking, it is really good practice to try and most of the time sit down and think about what it is we're eating. So back to digestion and structure. That gastrointestinal tract starts from the mouth. It heads down in the esophagus where our food travels down to our stomach. In our stomach, we have a really important part of digestion where we have a lot of gastric acid and stomach secretions, which also help to break that food down. And a lot of these different things occur in different areas. So in the stomach, we've got a lot of secretions that help us to break down proteins in food. And it's important that stomach acid maintains a good pH level for the stomach, which is more acidic, to help in breaking down those proteins. So if we've got issues here, that can have an effect on how we break down things. People who struggle to break down meat and things like that can occur often up here. So we need to have that healthy stomach as well, and we're going to go more into this in more detail in later vids. And then from the stomach, once that starts to get broken down, food then moves down into the small intestine. We have secretions from the gallbladder, the bile, which helps us to break down fats. So often if we have trouble breaking down fatty foods or on a bit of an aversion to fatty foods, there may be indicative of something going on with your gallbladder or your bile production. So we want all that to be coming out nicely. We want that to be breaking down our fats and continuing to break down foods. And then we've got other enzymes that are often produced by our pancreas that comes into the small intestinal area that helps us to break down carbohydrates. So we've got all of these secretions and enzymes and things going up to help us break down our food, which is really important because our food comes in large chunks. We need to break it down into individual pieces. So what we're trying to do is break down proteins into amino acids that we can then use to form our neurotransmitters and our good brain chemistry. But then we want our carbohydrates to be broken down into different glucose and sugar particles and things that we can use for energy. And we want our fats to be broken down into lipids that we can use for cell structure, for hormonal signaling. All of these components are so important, but also in breaking these things down, we also release these beautiful vitamins and nutrients and things that also help with any of these areas, creating those good mood neurotransmitters, for cellular structure, for beautiful skin, for hormonal production and regulation. All of these functions in the body run off these things and this fuel that we get by putting awesome food into our mouths. So we want all these areas to be functioning properly. when it comes to the structure, we talk a lot these days about gut microbiota and healthy guts. A lot of the time we are talking about within the lining of the small intestine, where a lot of this microbiota resides. And so the microbiota is our internal bacteria, and we have so much of this within our whole bodies. It's something like 10 times the amount of cells that we have in our body is the amount of bacteria that we have in our body. And a lot of people, when you talk about this, freak out a little bit and think of bacteria as being an unclean thing or something creepy crawly. But the bacteria is one of the most important parts of a healthy system. And we've got a balance between good bacteria and bad bacteria, which also resides and does have its function within the body, but we need the good bacteria to be up at a level where we're keeping the bad bacteria in check. And we do talk a lot about the microbiota of the gut, but we also have good and bad bacteria in our mouths, in our stomachs, in our esophagus, in our reproductive systems, all through the body, even on our skin. And so meaning that maintaining a good microbiota is really important to our system to make sure we keep bad bacteria and bad microorganisms and viruses and things like that down. It plays such a vital role to the immune system. Not only by maintaining, the good bacteria and the bad bacteria and keeping the nasties at bay, but also within our gastrointestinal systems, we also have some really important immune cells and things that are produced by having a healthy gastrointestinal system, and they're produced within our guts. We also produce certain hormones in our guts. And we produce some nutrients and vitamins that our body actually produces itself within our gut. So it's also very important for hormonal control and for mood and brain health, because it also contributes to this neurotransmitter function. So you may have heard of things like serotonin and dopamine, these feel-good, happy neurotransmitters, are things that regulate our mood and ensure that we don't end up with things like depression or anxiety or other mood disorders. So what I might do is leave this video for today. There is a lot to digest, and I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the structure of the small intestines